Roses are red. Violets are blue. Grass is green. The sky on a clear day is a gorgeous shade of blue. Every child knows this. You point at an apple and say, "What color is that?" And the kid says, "Red." No hesitation. It's red. It's obviously red. The redness is right there sitting on the surface of the apple, plain as day. You can see it. You can practically reach out and touch the redness. And I want you to hold on to that feeling for a moment, that absolute certainty, that sense that the world is colored, that color is real, that it is out there, painted on the surfaces of everything, just waiting for you to open your eyes and look. Because I am about to take it away from you. That apple is not red. The sky is not blue. Grass is not green. Nothing you have ever looked at in your entire life has had any color whatsoever. Not one thing. Not ever. Color does not exist out there in the world. It never has. And by the time we are finished here today, you will understand exactly why. But first, let us give the other side its day in court, because the idea that objects have color is not stupid. It is one of the most reasonable, common sense ideas a human being ever came up with. And the evidence for it seems overwhelming. Let me lay it out. But you walk outside, you see a fire truck. It is red. You walk halfway around the block. Still red. You look at it in the morning. Red. You look at it in the afternoon. Still red. You come back the next day. Red. You take a photograph of it. Red. You show the photograph to a friend in another city. They say red. The redness appears to be a stable, persistent, perfectly reliable property of the truck. It does not depend on where you are standing. It does not depend on what time of day it is. It does not depend on who is doing the looking. It seems as fixed and objective as the truck's weight or the number of wheels it has. And look around you. The world is absolutely drenched in color. Bananas are yellow. Oceans are blue. Trees are green. Sunsets are orange and red and pink. Every single surface you look at seems to come with a color attached, like a label, like a permanent feature. And these labels are shared. If I hold up an orange and ask 50 people what color it is, they will all say the same thing. If color were an illusion, some kind of trick, would it not be chaos? Everybody seeing different things. Instead, we have consistency, agreement, stability. So the obvious conclusion, the one that every civilization in human history has arrived at, is dead simple. Color is a property of objects. It belongs to the thing you are looking at. The apple possesses redness the same way it possesses mass and shape. The sky possesses blueness. The grass possesses greenness. These are facts about the world, and that is completely wrong. All of it, every word. Let me start pulling the threads. The first thing we need to do is ask a very basic question. But first, what is light? Not what does it look like, not what do we use it for. What is it physically? Isaac Newton was the first person to really crack this open in a serious way. Back in 1666, he took a glass prism and let a beam of sunlight pass through it. What came out the other side was a rainbow, a spread of colors from red on one end to violet on the other, fanned out across the wall of his room. Now, people had seen rainbows before. People had seen prisms make pretty colors before. But Newton did something nobody else had done. He took that spread out rainbow and passed it through a second prism, and the colors recombined back into white light. What did that prove? It proved that white light is not simple. It is a mixture. It contains all the colors of the rainbow, all blended together. The prism does not create color. It reveals what was hidden inside. That was a revolution. Before Newton, people thought white light was pure, and colors were corruptions. Newton showed it was the other way around. The colors were the components, and white was the mixture. And Newton noticed something else, something subtle and brilliant. He took that rainbow spectrum and bent it into a circle, a color wheel, to show how the colors related to each other. And in doing so, he connected the red end to the violet end. He closed the loop. But in nature, in the actual spectrum, there is no loop. Red and violet are at opposite ends of a line. Newton's color wheel was the first hint that the way we organize color has more to do with our perception than with the physics. The spectrum is a line. The color wheel is a human invention. We will come back to that. Newton also discovered something troubling about orange. He could create the experience of orange in two ways. He could isolate the orange portion of the spectrum, a single band of wavelengths between red and yellow, pure spectral orange. Or he could mix red light and yellow light together, and the result looked orange too. Same experience, different physics. Newton had stumbled, without fully realizing it, onto the fact that the eye could be fooled, that the language of color was not the same as the language of wavelengths. It would take centuries for that distinction to be fully understood. But what are these components, physically? It took another 200 years to answer that. James Clerk Maxwell, in the 1860s, showed that light is an electromagnetic wave, a ripple in the electromagnetic field, the same kind of field that makes magnets work, the same kind of field that makes your hair stand up from a rubber balloon. Light is just a traveling disturbance in that field, moving at roughly 186,000 miles per second. And like any wave, it has a wavelength, it has a frequency. A short wavelength means a high frequency. A long wavelength means a low frequency. That is all there is to it. Now here's what I need you to understand. The electromagnetic spectrum is vast. It stretches from radio waves, which can have wavelengths of hundreds of meters, longer than a football field, all the way down to gamma rays, which have wavelengths smaller than the nucleus of an atom. In between you have microwaves, infrared radiation, ultraviolet, X-rays, all the same kind of wave, the same physics governs all of them. The only difference between a radio wave and a gamma ray is the wavelength. That is it. And out of that enormous spectrum, that vast continuum of possible wavelengths, your eyes can detect a pathetically thin sliver, from roughly 380 nanometers at the violet end to roughly 700 nanometers at the red end. That is your window. That is everything you have ever seen. Every sunset, every rainbow, every painting, every face. All of it comes through that one tiny crack in the electromagnetic wall. Everything else is invisible to you. Not dark, not hidden behind something. Invisible. You have no sensory access to it whatsoever. Radio waves are passing through your body right now, thousands of them, carrying music and voices and television signals, and you feel nothing. Infrared radiation is pouring off every warm object in the room, and you cannot see it. Ultraviolet light from the sun is bouncing off surfaces all around you, and it might as well not exist. You are sitting in the middle of a vast electromagnetic ocean, and you can see the tiniest puddle. A rattlesnake, by contrast, has infrared detectors and pit organs on the sides of its head. It can see the body heat of a mouse in total darkness. It cannot guess where the mouse is. See it as clearly as you see a lamp. That mouse is glowing in the infrared, radiating wavelengths around 10,000 nanometers, and the snake detects those wavelengths with specialized pit organs that produce a kind of thermal image. The snake navigates a visual world that overlaps with yours barely at all. And remember, the physics governing infrared light is the same physics governing the light you see. Same equations, same wave behavior, same electromagnetic field. The snake is not perceiving a different universe, it is perceiving a different slice of the same universe. Your slice and the snake's slice barely touch. So already we have a problem. Because if color were really a property of the world, you would expect the world to have color at every wavelength. But it does not. Radio waves do not have a color. X-rays do not have a color. Only this absurdly narrow band seems colored. Does that not strike you as suspicious? Is the universe only colored in one little strip and gray everywhere else? Or is it more likely that the coloring is something you are adding? But fine, let us keep going. Let us look more carefully at what happens when light bounces off an object and enters your eye. Because this is where the story really falls apart. An apple sits on a table. Sunlight falls on it. What happens? The atoms in the apple's skin absorb certain wavelengths of light and reflect others. In the case of a red apple, the surface absorbs most of the shorter wavelengths, the blues and greens, and reflects back the longer wavelengths, the reds and oranges. That reflected light travels through the air, enters your eye, passes through the cornea and the lens, and hits the retina at the back of your eyeball. So far, no color. Wavelengths bounced off a surface and hit a detector. There is no redness anywhere in this process. The wavelengths have frequencies and amplitudes. They do not have redness. Redness is not a physical quantity. You will not find it in any equation. You will not find it in Maxwell's equations. You will not find it in quantum electrodynamics. It is not there. But something has to turn those wavelengths into an experience, and that something is your retina. In the back of your eye, on the retina, there are about 6 million tiny cells called cones. These are your color senses, and there are exactly 3 types. One type, the L cones, responds most strongly to longer wavelengths peaking around 560 nanometers. Another type, the M cones, responds most strongly to medium wavelengths, peaking around 530 nanometers. And the third type, the S cones, responds most strongly to shorter wavelengths, peaking around 420 nanometers. Now I need you to notice something important. These are not precision instruments. Each cone type does not detect one specific wavelength like a radio tuned to one station. Each cone responds to a broad overlapping range of wavelengths. The L cones respond somewhat to green light. The M cones respond somewhat to red light. They are mushy, imprecise, overlapping bell curves of sensitivity. And you know what else? The L cone peaks at 560 nanometers. That is not red, that is yellowish green. The L cone peaks at 530 nanometers. Also green, so your so-called red and green detectors both peak in the green part of the spectrum. If you told an engineer you wanted to build a color detection system and this is the design they came up with, you would fire that engineer. It is a terrible design. But it works because the brain is very clever about what it does with the signals. When light hits your retina, each of the three cone types generates a signal proportional to how strongly it was stimulated. And that is all the information your brain receives. Three numbers: the L signal, the M signal, and the S signal. Three numbers out of the infinite complexity of the electromagnetic spectrum. Let me say that again, because it matters. The light coming into your eye might have any spectral composition whatsoever. It might be a single pure wavelength. It might be a mix of 50 different wavelengths in different proportions. It could be anything. The spectrum of incoming light is an infinitely complex function with information at every single wavelength. And your eye reduces all of that to three numbers. Three numbers, that is the entire input to your color vision system. Everything else, the millions of colors you think you see, the subtle gradations, the shades and tints and hues, all of it is reconstructed by your brain from those three impoverished numbers. This has a devastating consequence, and it is the one thing above all else that proves color is not a property of the world. Imagine I show you a light that has a single pure wavelength of 570 nanometers. Monochromatic yellow light. It stimulates your L cones quite a lot, your M cones quite a lot, and your S cones very little. Your brain receives those three numbers, does its computation, and presents you with the experience of yellow. Now imagine a completely different light. This one is not monochromatic at all. It is a mixture of two wavelengths, roughly 700 nanometers, which is red, and roughly 530 nanometers, which is green. Those two wavelengths, arriving simultaneously, stimulate your L cones quite a lot, your M cones quite a lot, and your SIR cones very little. Same three numbers, completely different physical light. And you see yellow, the exact same yellow, indistinguishable. You cannot tell the difference. No amount of squinting, no amount of concentration, no amount of practice will help to your visual system. These are identical, but they are not identical. Not even close. A spectrometer, a simple physical instrument, can tell them apart immediately. One is monochromatic, the other is a mixture. They have completely different spectral compositions. The physical reality is different, but your experience is the same. This phenomenon has a name: metamerism. And it is not a footnote. It is not a quirk. It is the foundation of every color screen you have ever looked at. That television in your living room, the one you watch movies on, it has tiny light-emitting elements in three colors. Red, green, and blue. That is all. Three wavelengths. And by mixing those three in different proportions, it can make you see what looks like every color in the visible spectrum. You look at the screen and see a lemon. Yellow. But there is no yellow light coming from that screen. Not a single photon of 570 nanometer light. There is only a careful mixture of red and green calibrated to produce the same three numbers in your cones that real yellow light would produce. Your television is a metamerism machine. It is an elaborate device for lying to your eyes in a precise and consistent way. And it works flawlessly because your eyes are lying right back. They were never detecting wavelengths. They were never reading out the spectral truth. They were always and only providing three numbers. I want you to sit with this for a moment. If two physically different lights produce the same experience, then the experience is not telling you about the light. The experience is telling you about your nervous system's response to the light. Color is not a detection. It is a construction. Think about what that means for every argument you have ever had about color. That shirt is teal. No, it is turquoise. You think you are arguing about the shirt. You are not. You are arguing about what is happening inside two different skulls that receive slightly different three-number summaries of the same electromagnetic and summaries of the same. What sparked is different interpretations. The shirt is just sitting there, reflecting a complex spectrum of wavelengths, minding its own business, possessing no color opinion of its own. Or think about this. The same object can change color for the same person depending on what it sits next to. Put an orange on a blue tablecloth and it looks more vivid, more intensely orange than it does on a neutral gray surface. The wavelengths reflecting off the orange have not changed. The electromagnetic situation is identical. But your brain is running a contrast computation, comparing the orange to its surroundings and boosting the perceived saturation. The color you see is not just about the object, it is about the entire visual scene. But it gets worse. Oh, it gets so much worse. Take a white sheet of paper. Hold it outside in bright sunlight. It looks white. Now bring it inside your kitchen under the fluorescent lights. Still white. Now take it into a room lit only by candlelight. That warm orange flickering candlelight. And the paper still looks white. Do you appreciate how strange that is? Sunlight is a broad spectrum light, roughly even across the visible range. Fluorescent light is spiky and irregular, with sharp peaks at certain wavelengths and deep valleys at others. Candlelight is overwhelmingly weighted toward the red end of the spectrum. The actual light reflecting off that paper into your eye is dramatically different in all three situations. The three numbers from your cones are completely different. Completely. And yet you see white. Every time. Your brain is not showing you what is actually arriving at your retina. It is interpreting the scene. It is looking at the overall illumination, making an estimate of what the light source probably looks like, subtracting that out, and presenting you with what it calculates the true surface color probably is. This process is called color constancy, and it is one of the most sophisticated computations your nervous system performs, and you are never ever aware of it happening. What is really going on here? This brain of yours is a liar. Not a careless liar. A masterful, strategic, highly competent liar. It lies to you in exactly the way that is useful, because what you need to know as an organism trying to survive is not what wavelengths happen to be bouncing around the room. What you need to know is that piece of fruit ripe? Is that animal dangerous? Is that person's face flushed? You need to identify objects and surfaces, regardless of the lighting. So your brain removes the lighting from the equation and shows you a corrected, adjusted, stabilized image. Very useful, but not true. Not in any simple sense of the word. And now let me show you something that makes this even more unsettling. Magenta. You know the color. Vivid. Bright, reddish purple. You see it on flowers, on fabric, on paint chips at the hardware store. A perfectly ordinary color. Go find it on the electromagnetic spectrum. I will wait. You will not find it. Magenta does not correspond to any single wavelength of light. It is not between red and blue on the spectrum. There is no between red and blue on the spectrum. The spectrum is a line. Red is at one end around 700 nanometers. Violet is at the other end, around 380 nanometers. The spectrum does not wrap around. There is no loop. There is no bridge from red to violet. But your brain needs to categorize every combination of cone signals, and some combinations do not correspond to any single wavelength. When you stimulate the L cone strongly and the S cone strongly with very little M cone activity, there is no single wavelength that does that. A single wavelength, whatever it is, always stimulates the M cones somewhat if it stimulates the L cones. The physics does not allow for the particular pattern of three numbers that a red plus blue mix produces. So your brain invents a color. It fills in the gap with a purely neurological fabrication.